It was one of those nights when the world felt half asleep, and the only thing awake was the wind. The road that wound around Summit Lake was empty, just a strip of cracked asphalt glistening under the moonlight. Pine trees leaned in on both sides, whispering secrets I wasn't supposed to hear. I had driven out there because sleep had abandoned me again. At 6 to 7, that happens more than I'd like to admit. Sometimes I just ride until the quiet feels heavier than the noise at home. My name is Margaret Holt, widow, retired school librarian, mother of one son, Evan, and reluctant roommate to his wife, Rachel. I'm not dramatic by nature. I bake pies for church picnics, feed stray cats, keep to myself. But that night, I saw something that split my ordinary life wide open. A single pair of headlights appeared ahead on the opposite curve, moving slow. I turned my own lights off, thinking maybe it was another insomniac like me. But then I recognized the car, our silver Toyota Camry. Rachel's car. My heart gave a thud so loud I thought she might hear it from inside. What on earth was she doing out here, miles from town, near midnight? She stopped near the pier, engine idling. I crouched behind a cluster of cattails by instinct, felt foolish, but something told me to stay hidden. The trunk popped open. She stepped out wearing a dark hoodie, the hood drawn low over her face, hands gripping something heavy. She struggled to drag it out of the trunk, a large black suitcase, slick with duct tape across its middle. The sound of it scraping the gravel made my stomach twist. I wanted to call out, to ask if she needed help, but the words wouldn't leave my throat. She dragged it toward the end of the pier, glanced over her shoulder once, and then, without hesitation, heaved it into the lake. The splash echoed through the still air like a gunshot. Water rose, rippled, swallowed. And then, silence. Almost. Because a second later, I heard it, soft, faint, so easily dismissed if you weren't listening. A cry. Not loud. Not human, maybe. But it sounded like something, or someone, inside that suitcase had tried to breathe before the water sealed it shut. I froze. My hands clutched the grass. My mind scrambled for reason. Maybe it was just air escaping, or a fish, or my imagination. But the hair on my arms stood straight up. Rachel didn't linger. She stood there a heartbeat, wiped her hands on her jeans, and got back into the car. Her taillights disappeared around the bend, and the night swallowed her. I waited. 1 minute. Then 2. My breath fogged in the cold air. Finally, I stepped out from the shadows. The lake shimmered under the moon like broken glass. Ripples still spread outward where the suitcase had gone under. I should have gone home. Pretended I'd seen nothing. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. It sits in your chest and claws until you feed it. I edged closer to the pier, peering down into the black water. Nothing. Just my reflection staring back, an old woman with trembling hands and too much heart for her own good. "Lord, what have you done, Rachel?" I whispered. I thought about calling 911, but what would I even say? My daughter-in-law threw a suitcase in a lake, and I think it cried. They'd think I'd lost my mind. So I drove home. The tires hissed against the wet road, my headlights cutting through patches of fog. The whole way back, that sound, the faint cry, echoed inside my head like a prayer gone wrong. When I reached our driveway, the house was dark except for one upstairs light, Rachel's. I turned the key quietly, slipped off my shoes, and stood in the hallway, listening. Silence. Not even the hum of the refrigerator. Just that eerie kind of stillness that makes you realize how loud your own heartbeat is. I peeked into their room. The door was half closed. Through the crack, I could see Rachel sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. Her clothes were different, clean. She must have changed. Her hair clung damply to her neck. I backed away before she saw me. All night, I lay in my room, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the lake again, the ripples, the moonlight, the black water swallowing something alive. I told myself I'd forget it. Pretend it was a dream. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. Something terrible had happened out there. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own family. By morning, the house smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls, Rachel's doing. She greeted me with that sweet smile she always used when she wanted to hide something. "Good morning, Mom," she said. "Did you sleep okay?" I wanted to ask where she'd been. Instead, I just nodded. "Fine, dear. You?" "Oh, I stayed up watching TV," she said lightly. Her eyes didn't meet mine. There was mud on her sneakers. The lie hung between us like smoke neither of us wanted to acknowledge. As she handed me my coffee, her hand shook slightly. "Not much. Just enough to notice if you were the kind of woman who spent 40 years reading people's faces for a living." When she turned away, I saw a faint bruise on the back of her neck. Small, round, like someone's thumbprint. That image joined the rest in my sleepless mind: her car, the suitcase, the cry, the bruise. None of it fit together yet, but I knew one thing: something was very, very wrong. And the worst part? I couldn't tell my son. Evan would never believe me. He adored his wife, defended her like she could do no wrong. If I accused her of tossing a suitcase into a lake, he'd think grief had finally pushed me over the edge. So I said nothing. I drank my coffee. I watched her hum softly while cleaning the counter, like a woman without secrets. But every time the spoon clinked against the cup, I jumped. Every sound reminded me of that splash. And in that moment, I decided two things. 1, I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw. 2, I'd keep my eyes open from now on, because whatever Rachel was hiding out there in Summit Lake, it hadn't sunk as deep as she thought. If you're listening to this, please don't go anywhere. Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who's ever felt that cold twist of doubt inside their own home, because what I saw that night was only the beginning. That night, I sat in my favorite armchair by the living room window, the one facing the old maple tree out front. The house was quiet, too quiet. Even the refrigerator had stopped its usual humming, like the whole place was holding its breath along with me. I tried to read, but the words on the page blurred into the same picture over and over. Rachel standing at the edge of the pier, moonlight cutting across her face, the suitcase sinking into black water. Maybe I should tell you who I am before you decide whether to believe me. I'm Margaret Holt, 67, widow of the late Robert Holt, who was a police sergeant here in Carver Bay, Maine, the kind of man who could read guilt in a handshake. Maybe that's where I learned it from. After Robert passed 10 years ago, my son Evan insisted I move in with him and his new wife. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone out there," he'd said. I didn't argue. Loneliness can wear you down like water on stone. So here I am, an old woman with thinning grey hair and a tidy life built around small things, morning coffee at 7, gardening at 9, crossword puzzles before bed. I don't go looking for trouble. But sometimes, trouble doesn't need an invitation. When Evan married Rachel, I told myself to be kind. She was young, maybe 28 back then, polite, careful with her words. Too careful, sometimes. She always smiled, but her eyes never joined in. I figured she just needed time. And yet, even in those early days, something about her kept me uneasy. She'd flinch at loud noises, avoid family gatherings, and stare off into space like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Robert would have called it instinct. Your gut never lies, Maggie. Tonight, that instinct was screaming. After the kitchen clock struck midnight, I gave up pretending I could sleep. I put on my robe, made tea, and sat there listening to the wind scrape against the siding. The house creaked, old bones shifting, but every creak made me twitch. Rachel's door stayed closed. Not a sound came from inside, not even her breathing. I told myself she was sleeping peacefully, that the woman I saw by the lake couldn't possibly be her. But I couldn't lie to myself forever. Because when she said "Good morning, Mom" earlier, she'd avoided my eyes, just like she always did when she was hiding something. I thought of Evan then. My only child. My heart. He'd been working double shifts lately at the auto shop, coming home exhausted, collapsing on the couch. Maybe he knew something. Maybe he didn't. Would he believe me if I told him? "Evan," I whispered to the empty room, "your wife threw a suitcase in the lake, and I think someone cried from inside it." Even saying it out loud sounded insane. I shut my eyes and saw the splash again, the ripples spreading, the moon's reflection breaking apart like shattered glass. Then that voice, or whatever it was, faint, desperate, swallowed by water. The kettle whistled, shrill and sudden. My hand trembled as I poured. I couldn't stop thinking, what if it was a child? No, that's crazy. She wouldn't, she couldn't. But why else would someone toss something so heavy, so secret, in the middle of the night? I didn't want to believe the worst, but I'd seen too many true crime stories on TV to ignore that kind of behavior. Rachel wasn't calm that night, she was frantic. Her movements jerky, eyes darting like a hunted animal. Something broke inside her long before that suitcase hit the water. By 3 a.m., I found myself standing at the front window again. The lake wasn't far, 2 miles down the main road. I could almost smell it, damp and metallic. The thought of that suitcase sitting at the bottom, rocking gently with the waves, made my chest tighten. I should have called someone. But fear and shame make strange partners. What if I was wrong? What if she was innocent and I destroyed my family over nothing? So I did what cowards do best. I stayed quiet. But silence doesn't buy peace, it rents it, and the lease runs out fast. The next day, Rachel acted like the picture of domestic grace. Pancakes on the table, dishes washed, laundry folded. But I watched her hands. The tremor was still there. Her nails were clean, scrubbed raw at the edges. When Evan left for work, she sat by the window, staring out at the woods. Her lips moved slightly, whispering something under her breath. I couldn't hear the words, but the rhythm was strange, like she was repeating a name. Later that afternoon, I went into town for groceries. The cashier, Cindy, asked if everything was okay. I almost told her everything right there, by the stack of discount apples. But how do you confess that your daughter-in-law might have drowned something in a suitcase? I just smiled and said, "Fine, dear. Just fine." That night, I tried to sleep again, but the lake wouldn't leave my mind. I kept hearing that sound, the cry that might not have been real. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up and sat up in bed. Maybe I needed proof. Maybe if I went back and found nothing, I could finally breathe again. I slipped on my coat, grabbed my flashlight, and crept down the stairs. Every step groaned under my weight. I glanced at their bedroom door. It was closed, but I could see light leaking through the crack. Rachel was awake. Her shadow moved across the floor, pacing. Then she stopped. For a long moment, everything was still. Then I heard her whisper, barely audible, "Please, don't open it." I froze. My breath caught. Those were the exact words I thought I'd heard near the lake. Only now, they were clear. Real. And coming from inside my own house. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, until my back hit the wall. What did she mean? What wasn't I supposed to open? The rest of the night, I didn't move. I just sat on the edge of my bed, clutching my robe, waiting for dawn. By morning, Rachel was gone again, left early for errands. And that's when I knew. I couldn't keep pretending. Whatever she'd thrown into Summit Lake, whatever secret she'd buried there, I was going to find it. Even if it meant facing something I wasn't ready to see. If you're listening to this, please don't go anywhere. Because what happened when I went back to that lake changed everything I thought I knew about my family. When Rachel returned the next morning, she looked different. Not disheveled, not frantic, just empty. Like someone had quietly switched off the light behind her eyes. She set her purse on the counter and smiled at me. "Morning, Mom," she said softly, almost rehearsed. "Did you sleep well?" I just stared at her. Her voice sounded normal, but something in the way she said Mom made my stomach twist. It was too smooth, too practiced. "Fine," I lied. "You were up late?" Her hand froze halfway to the coffee pot. Then she smiled again. "Just couldn't sleep. You know how it is." I nodded, but I knew. She hadn't been awake, she'd been watching. For the rest of that morning, she moved through the house like a ghost. The clinking of dishes, the hum of the dryer, the creak of the floorboards, every sound felt louder than usual, pressing into the silence between us. Even the air felt heavier, thick with unspoken things. Evan came home around noon, wiping grease off his hands from the shop. He kissed Rachel on the cheek and gave me a tired grin. "Hey, Ma. Everything okay here?" I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to. But how do you tell your son that the woman he loves is keeping secrets that reek of the lake? Fine, I said again. Just fine. Rachel slipped away upstairs a few minutes later, muttering something about folding laundry. But I heard her phone buzzing in her pocket as she walked away. She glanced down at it, and her face drained of color before she disappeared around the corner. Evan didn't notice. He was too busy rummaging through the fridge. Work's been crazy, he said, yawning. I might have to take another night shift next week. Of course he would. He always did when tension rose in the house, the kind of man who ran from storms rather than weathered them. When he left again, the silence returned, but this time, it wasn't empty. It was watching me. I decided to clean the living room just to keep my hands busy. As I dusted the bookshelf, I noticed something odd. The family photo from Evan and Rachel's wedding was gone. The frame sat there, clean, dust-free, but the picture itself was missing. I searched around, behind the TV, on the side table, even in the trash. Nothing. That photo had been there for 5 years. And now it was gone. When Rachel came back downstairs, I asked casually, "You doing a little redecorating?" Her eyes flickered. The wedding picture. It's missing. Oh, she said quickly. I took it to get the frame replaced. The glass cracked. I looked closer at her. Funny. I didn't see any crack. Her lips pressed together. Maybe you didn't notice. And then she turned away, just like that. Conversation over. But the lie hung between us, thick as smoke. That evening, the house filled with the smell of dinner, chicken stew simmering on the stove, the kind Robert used to love. Normally, that scent comforted me. Tonight, it made my stomach churn. Rachel barely touched her food. Evan kept glancing between us, sensing something he couldn't name. "You two seem quiet," he said finally. Rachel smiled faintly. "Just tired." I said nothing. My eyes were on her hands. She was twisting her wedding ring, over and over, like she was trying to scrub away a thought. Later, after Evan went to bed, I sat in the living room again. I could hear Rachel's muffled voice from upstairs, low, tense, whispering. At first I thought she was on the phone. Then I realized she was crying. "No," she whispered. "You promised. You said it was gone." I held my breath. Her voice cracked. "I can't do this again. Please stop calling me." A door slammed upstairs. Then silence. Every instinct in me screamed to go up there, but something stopped me. Maybe fear. Maybe the thought that, once I knew the truth, I couldn't unhear it. The clock struck midnight. The house went still again. And that's when I saw it, a small light flickering from under her door. A bluish glow. A video playing on her phone. I crept closer, quiet as I could. Through the narrow gap, I saw her sitting on the floor, the phone shaking in her hands. On the screen, for just a second, I caught sight of something that froze my blood. A suitcase. The same one from the lake. Floating. Sinking. And a hand, a pale, trembling hand, pressing against it from inside. Then the screen went black. Rachel let out a small, broken sound. A sob that didn't sound like guilt, it sounded like terror. I backed away, heart racing, nearly stumbling over the hallway rug. I wanted to wake Evan right then. I wanted to scream. But something inside me whispered, "Not yet. Watch first. Understand later." The next morning, Rachel was already gone again. No note. No explanation. Just her car missing from the driveway and the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the kitchen. Evan asked, "Did she say where she went?" "No," I lied again. "Maybe into town." He shrugged, poured coffee, and left for work. As soon as his truck disappeared down the road, I went upstairs. Rachel's phone charger was gone, but her laptop sat open on the bed. The screen was locked, but one folder name flashed across it before it dimmed: the recordings. I didn't dare touch it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I pulled back. Something told me that whatever was inside that folder would change everything. That afternoon, the silence in that house was unbearable. The ticking clock, the groan of the floor, even the sound of my own breathing, it all felt amplified. Like the house was holding a secret it wanted to spill. And then, from outside, I heard a faint splash. I froze. The lake was a good walk away, but sound traveled far on quiet mornings like this. I stood at the window, staring toward the tree line. The wind carried something, a soft hum, almost like a voice. No. My mind was playing tricks on me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was listening, that something dark had been invited in the moment that Suitcase hit the water. By nightfall, I'd made up my mind. If Rachel wouldn't tell me what was happening, I'd find out myself. Tomorrow, I'd go back to Summit Lake. Alone. And if that suitcase was still there, I'd open it. No matter what waited inside. The next evening, the sky over Carver Bay turned the color of bruised lavender. That strange, heavy kind of quiet hung over Summit Road, the kind that makes your footsteps sound louder than they should. I told myself I was just going for a walk. That's what I told Evan when he called. "Mom, don't stay out too late, it's getting chilly," he said. "I won't, I promised." Another lie. I waited until dusk swallowed the last bit of light before heading toward Summit Lake. The wind carried the scent of pine and cold water. Somewhere in the distance, a loon cried, a long, echoing sound that seemed to pierce right through the trees. Every step closer made my heart pound harder. The flashlight in my hand trembled. When I reached the lake, fog had already begun to curl across the surface, moving like slow breath. The water was still except for the faint ripple of reeds brushing against the shore. For a moment, I thought maybe it was all in my head. Maybe the suitcase had sunk deep enough that I'd never find it. Maybe that was mercy. But then, something caught the beam of my flashlight. Near the cluster of reeds by the far dock, a dull metallic glint broke the surface. Just barely. But enough. The suitcase was still there. Half submerged, half floating, like it couldn't decide whether to let go or come back. My throat tightened. Why hadn't it sunk completely? What was keeping it buoyant? I stepped off the path and into the mud. My shoes sank instantly, the cold seeping through my soles. I took another step, and another, until the hem of my coat brushed the water. For a while, the only sound was the wind in the trees and the slow lapping of the lake. Then, a whisper. So soft I almost thought it was the wind. "Please, don't open it." I froze. Every muscle locked. The beam of my flashlight quivered as I scanned the shore. Nothing. No one. The voice came again, faint, pleading. "Please, don't open it." It was the same tone I'd heard in my house, the same trembling sound that had haunted me for nights. But now it was here, coming from the water. I tried to steady my breathing, forcing myself to think rationally. Maybe it was a trick of the wind. Or some animal. Or a loose piece of metal vibrating under the surface. But the sound, God help me, it sounded human. I waded deeper, the cold biting through my legs. The water reached my knees, then my thighs. The smell of algae and rust filled my nose. When I was close enough, I reached out with the flashlight and nudged the suitcase. It rocked gently, sloshing. A few air bubbles rose to the surface. "Please, don't." The voice again, closer now. I stumbled back, nearly slipping in the mud. My heart was a drum inside my chest. "Who's there?" I shouted. "Rachel? Is that you?" Nothing. Just the ripple of water, the echo of my own voice. Then I saw it, a handprint. A pale, muddy handprint smeared across the top of the suitcase, sliding downward, as if it had been pressed from the inside. My mind screamed run. But my heart whispered help. Robert's voice echoed in my memory, "Courage isn't the absence of fear, Maggie. It's doing what's right while you're still scared stiff." So I grabbed the handle. It was heavier than I expected. Waterlogged. My arms shook as I dragged it toward the shore, my shoes slipping on the slick mud. It made a dull scraping sound against the rocks. By the time I got it up onto dry ground, I was gasping. The voice had stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I crouched beside it, catching my breath, staring at the rusted lock. It looked fragile, old brass, slightly corroded. I could probably break it with a rock if I tried. But my hands wouldn't move. They just hovered there, trembling above the latch. Because I wasn't ready to know. Please. The whisper again. So faint it felt like it came from inside my own head. My fingers brushed the lock. Cold metal, slick with water. And then, I heard twigs snap behind me. I spun around. Someone was there. At the tree line, half hidden in the fog, a silhouette. Tall. Still. Watching. Who's there? I called, my voice cracking. No answer. The figure didn't move. Didn't run. Just stood there, like a shadow carved out of the mist. The beam of my flashlight hit the fog, scattering light, but I couldn't make out a face. Rachel? I whispered. Is that you? Still nothing. Then, just like that, it turned and disappeared into the trees. Silent. Effortless. Gone. I stood there shaking, unsure if I'd imagined it. But the footprints in the mud said otherwise. Someone had been there. Someone who didn't want me to see what was inside that suitcase. My breathing came in ragged gasps. My pulse hammered in my ears. But something deep inside me, curiosity, fear, mother's instinct, I don't know what, drove me forward. I grabbed a rock and slammed it against the lock. Once. Twice. 3 times. It didn't budge. Water seeped out from the edges with each blow, dark and thick. Finally, with one last hit, the lock snapped. The sound echoed through the trees like a gunshot. I froze again, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Just the wind. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. The hinges groaned. A faint hiss escaped from inside, like air releasing from a long-sealed box. For a split second, the flashlight flickered. Then I saw it. A black plastic liner, wrapped tightly around something rectangular. Beneath it, water pooled and reflected the light in sharp flashes. And beneath the plastic, something moved. Just a small shift, like the settling of weight. But I saw it. The whisper came again, barely a breath. Please, don't open it. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. My whole body shook. I couldn't breathe. That voice, it wasn't coming from the trees. It wasn't in my head. It was inside the suitcase. I wanted to scream. To run. But I couldn't move. Because that's when I realized something even worse. The voice wasn't saying it to me. It was saying it for me. As if whatever was inside already knew what would happen next. I backed away, my heart in my throat. I left the suitcase there, half opened, the water still dripping from its corners. As I stumbled back toward the path, the fog closed in behind me. And somewhere between the trees, I heard another sound, soft footsteps following me. Slow. Steady. Keeping pace. I didn't look back. When I finally reached the road, my flashlight went out. Only then did I realize something chilling. I'd left my phone, my only light, my only proof, sitting on the rock beside that cursed suitcase. And someone was still out there. Watching. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that suitcase again, half open, dripping water, whispering things no human should hear. And that face, or shadow, or whatever it was, standing at the edge of the woods. By dawn, the fog outside my window had thickened so much I couldn't even see the neighbor's fence. It was like the whole world decided to hide what I wasn't supposed to find. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd left behind. My phone. My proof. My fear. So by mid-morning, I made a decision. I was going back. I packed a thermos of coffee, a fresh flashlight, and a small shovel from the shed. My hands were shaking so badly I spilled half the coffee before I even zipped my jacket. I told myself it was about the phone. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. It was about knowing. Knowing what Rachel was hiding. Knowing why the lake wouldn't let go of that suitcase. When I reached Summit Lake, the fog had started to lift. The water shimmered pale gray, and the reeds swayed slow, like they were breathing. The suitcase was still there. Exactly where I left it. Lid cracked open, plastic liner torn, and that same faint ripple spreading outward from where the water touched it. My breath came out shaky. "All right, Maggie," I whispered. "Just grab the phone and go. Don't look inside." But then something moved. A faint shift inside the box. A ripple through the waterlogged plastic. The whisper returned, soft but desperate. "Please, help me." I froze. That word, help. Not don't open it. Not leave me. But help me. My heart nearly stopped. It was a different voice this time. Younger. Fragile. Familiar. I knelt slowly beside the suitcase, my knees sinking into the wet earth. My fingers hovered over the plastic liner. And then I pulled it back. The smell hit me first, metallic, earthy, like wet iron. But underneath it, something sweet. Like old perfume. Inside was a stack of soaked blankets, folded tightly around a small shape. The whisper came again, softer now. "Please." My hand trembled as I peeled the last layer back. At first, I thought it was a doll. A porcelain baby, pale and perfect. But then its chest moved. Barely, but enough. I screamed. I couldn't help it. It was a baby. A living, breathing baby. Cold, drenched, eyes half open like it had been crying for days. My hands shook as I lifted it. The skin was icy. Its lips trembled, trying to make sound, but only a faint whimper came out. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Oh my God, oh my God." I wrapped the child in my coat, holding it close, trying to warm it. My heart was racing so fast I thought I'd faint. The lake was silent, watching. And suddenly, it all started to click. Rachel's late-night drives. The exhaustion. The secret phone calls. The blood-stained rag I'd found in the trash last week. This baby wasn't supposed to exist. I stumbled back toward the path, clutching the child to my chest. My mind was spinning, 1,000 questions, none with answers. But as I reached the clearing, something stopped me cold. Rachel's car, parked at the trailhead. The driver's door was open. And Rachel was standing there, arms crossed, face pale as bone. "Where did you find that?" she said, her voice trembling. I swallowed hard. "Rachel, what is this? Who is this baby?" She didn't move. Didn't blink. "Put it down, Margaret." The way she said my name, low, shaking, made my skin crawl. "Rachel, it's alive. We need to take it to the hospital." "Put it down," she screamed. The sound tore through the fog, echoing across the water. I froze. The baby whimpered against my chest. Rachel took a step closer, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. You're not supposed to see it. You weren't supposed to hear it. What are you talking about?" Her voice cracked. "They said it wouldn't wake up. They said it was gone. But it kept crying. I couldn't." She covered her mouth, sobbing. "Rachel," I said softly, "who's they?" She looked past me, toward the lake. And whispered, "You should never have opened it." The wind shifted. A low, heavy sound rolled across the water, like a sigh. The trees swayed, the air thickened. Suddenly, the baby's eyes opened wide. Dark. Bottomless. And the whisper, that same whisper, came again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the baby. It came from behind me. "Give it back." I turned around slowly, my breath catching. At the water's edge stood a figure, pale, dripping, hair tangled over her face. Rachel screamed. I dropped the flashlight. The figure raised a trembling hand, pointing toward me. "Give it back." Rachel fell to her knees, sobbing. I tried to hide it. The fog swallowed everything, the trees, the car, the sound of my own heartbeat. I stumbled backward, clutching the baby. But its weight felt wrong now, too heavy, too cold. The whisper grew louder. "Give it back." And then, silence. The air stilled. The water went calm. When I looked down again, the baby was gone. Just a soaked blanket in my arms. I screamed, dropping it, searching the ground. No. No, where? But there was nothing. No baby. No sound. Only the suitcase, sitting there, closed again. Rachel was gone too. The car door hung open, the engine still running. I don't remember running home. I just remember locking every door, pulling every curtain, and sitting in the dark until morning. But even now, I still hear it. That whisper. From somewhere down the hallway. Please, help me. The lock finally gave way with a brittle snap. For a heartbeat, the night stood still. No crickets, no wind, only my pulse hammering in my ears. I pulled the metal latches apart, and the smell that rushed out was a mix of lake water and something old, something forgotten. Inside, there wasn't a body. There wasn't blood. There was a box. A soaked cardboard box, wrapped again and again in clear plastic, as if someone had tried to drown the past itself. My hands shook as I tore through the layers. Water sloshed over my shoes. The moon glinted on the plastic like silver veins. When I peeled the final sheet back, I froze. Inside lay a small cassette recorder, old and scratched. Next to it, several pages of what looked like children's drawings, crayon people with smiling faces, stick figure houses, a sun with uneven rays. And photographs, faded Polaroids of two little girls holding hands in matching dresses. One of them was unmistakably Rachel, my daughter-in-law. The other, a girl I didn't recognize. For a moment, I thought maybe it was Rachel's childhood friend. But the name scrawled on the back of the photo stopped my breath. Lena, age 8. Lena. Rachel had never once mentioned that name. I pressed a trembling finger to the cassette recorder. Its label was smudged, but 3 words were still legible. Please don't open. I felt the cold crawl up my spine. The same words I had heard whispered from inside the suitcase the night before. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed to throw the thing back into the lake, to walk away and pretend I'd seen nothing. But something deeper, a mother's stubborn curiosity, wouldn't let go. I clicked play. At first, only static. Then, a voice, young, trembling, and almost too soft to understand. Please, don't open the suitcase. Don't let him know. Don't. The tape hissed, warped, then went silent. I stared at the recorder, heart pounding so loud I thought it would wake the whole town. Whose voice was that? Rachel's? Or the girl named Lena? The air around me felt thick, as if the trees themselves were leaning closer. I rewound and pressed play again. The same plea repeated, distorted but clear enough this time to slice through me. Please don't open the suitcase. He'll find me if you do. I nearly dropped the recorder. That voice, it wasn't Rachel's adult tone. It was a child. 1,000 questions burned in my head. Why would Rachel keep a tape like this? Who was he? Why hide it at the bottom of the lake? I gathered the drawings and photos, wrapping them back into the plastic with shaking fingers. The paper edges were swollen, the ink bleeding like tears. That's when I noticed something else. Inside the lid of the suitcase, taped under the lining, a small plastic envelope. Inside it, a folded letter. The paper had almost fused together from the damp, but I could still read a few words. Dad made us promise. No one will believe. If she talks, he'll hurt her again. I stopped reading. My knees gave out, sinking into the muddy bank. I remembered the bruises Rachel used to hide under long sleeves even in July. The nights I'd hear muffled crying through the walls. The way she flinched whenever someone raised their voice. This wasn't just about secrets. This was about survival. As I sat there under the pale moonlight, the recorder still humming faint static, I realized I was holding a child's cry for help, a cry buried for decades. Then I heard it. A rustle behind me. Footsteps crunching leaves. I spun around, clutching the recorder to my chest. The trees stood silent. But a shadow moved, tall, still, watching. Who's there? I called out. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Rachel? Is that you? No answer. Only the sound of water lapping against the shore. I took a step back. My heel slipped on the wet mud, and I nearly fell into the lake. When I looked up again, the shadow was gone. I stuffed everything back into the suitcase and shut it tight. The last thing I needed was someone thinking I was the one hiding evidence in the middle of the night. As I dragged the suitcase toward my car, the recorder clicked off with a soft snap. The tape had reached its end. Driving home felt like crawling through fog. Every streetlight looked dimmer than usual, every shape in the darkness suspicious. By the time I reached our driveway, My nerves were shaking so badly I almost couldn't get the key in the door. The house was quiet, too quiet. Rachel's car was parked out front, but the lights were off. I thought of waking her, demanding answers right then, but something in me hesitated. If she'd gone to such lengths to hide this, she was terrified of something, or someone. I slipped the suitcase under my bed and sat on the edge, staring at the wall until dawn painted thin gold lines across the curtains. The child's voice still echoed in my ears. Please don't open the suitcase. But I had opened it. And now I couldn't unhear what it said. Somewhere deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. That voice on the tape wasn't finished speaking, and neither was the truth behind it. By morning, the sunlight felt wrong. Too bright. Too clean. It slipped through the blinds like it didn't know what had happened last night, like it didn't know that somewhere in my bedroom sat a suitcase full of ghosts. I hadn't slept. Not for a single minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that plastic box, those crayon drawings bleeding color, that desperate voice whispering please don't open it. Downstairs, I heard the faint clink of dishes. Rachel was in the kitchen. For a moment, I just stood in the hallway, listening. Her voice drifted up, calm, even cheerful, as she spoke on the phone. No, it's done, she said quietly. He'll never find it now. It's over. My blood ran cold. I moved one step closer, careful not to let the floor creak. A pause. Then her tone shifted, tighter, trembling. I know what he did. I can't live with it anymore. The line went silent. She hung up. I stepped into the kitchen. Rachel. She turned so fast her coffee sloshed over the counter. Oh, Margaret, you scared me. Her smile was too quick, too forced. You're up early. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, she didn't look like the cold, distant woman I'd resented for months. She looked fragile. Like someone who'd been running for years and had finally run out of breath. I couldn't sleep, I said. We need to talk. Her eyes flickered, not confusion, but recognition. Like she already knew why I was there. She didn't ask what it was about. Instead, she whispered, "Where did you go last night?" The question hit me like a slap. I could ask you the same thing. Rachel stared at me for a long, silent moment. Then her shoulders sank. She pressed her hands to her face, and the first sob broke through her control. "Oh God," she whispered. "You went to the lake, didn't you?" I said nothing. I didn't have to. Rachel sank into a chair, trembling. "You shouldn't have seen that, Margaret. You shouldn't have opened it." Her words sounded almost rehearsed, the same plea from the tape. What was I supposed to do? I said. "You threw it into the water like you were hiding a body." I heard a voice coming from it. "You expect me to ignore that?" Rachel looked up at me with eyes that had aged 10 years overnight. "You heard her voice." My heart thudded. Whose voice? She hesitated, then whispered, "My sister's." The room tilted slightly around me. I remembered the name scrawled on the photo, Lena. The little girl in the matching dress. "Rachel, your sister, she's gone, isn't she?" Rachel nodded. Her voice cracked. "She died when we were kids. At least, that's what my father made me say." The air between us thickened. I sat down slowly across from her. "Tell me the truth, Rachel. All of it." She took a shuddering breath. "My father was a monster. Everyone thought he was this church-going, well-respected man. But behind closed doors, he hurt us. Me and Lena. For years." Her words came in gasps, raw and shaking. "When Lena tried to tell our mother, he made her disappear. He told everyone she drowned. He even buried an empty coffin. I was too scared to say anything. He said if I told anyone, I'd end up just like her." I felt my throat close. "And the suitcase?" "That's where I kept everything," Rachel said. "The proof. The tape, the photos, the letter she wrote before she vanished. I recorded her voice the day before she was gone. She was terrified. She begged me not to tell anyone. But after he died last year, I thought maybe it was finally over." Her voice broke. "Then Evan found out." My stomach tightened. "My son." Rachel nodded weakly. He was angry. He said if that suitcase ever came out, it would destroy his reputation. He told me to get rid of it. To let the past rot where it belongs. He said people would think our family was twisted. That it would ruin his business, ruin your name. I couldn't speak. My son, the boy I raised, the man I thought I knew, had told her to bury her trauma to protect his image. Rachel's tears fell silently. I didn't want to throw it away, Margaret. But he made me choose. He said if I didn't, he'd leave me. And I just couldn't lose another person. The kitchen clock ticked loudly. Each second sounded like a heartbeat. I looked at her, this woman I'd judged, distrusted, silently resented, and all I could see now was a survivor. I thought the voice I heard from that suitcase was something evil, I whispered. But it wasn't. It was just pain, trapped too long. Rachel nodded, wiping her cheeks. I didn't want anyone to hear it. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew if I opened it again, I'd have to relive everything. Every scream. Every night. Outside, the wind rattled the window. The sunlight had dimmed, clouds sliding over the lake in the distance. I reached across the table and took her hand. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Rachel's grip tightened, desperate, grateful. What do we do now? We tell the truth, I said quietly. Even if it hurts. Her eyes widened. Evan will hate me. I met her gaze. Then he'll have to live with that. But I won't live under lies. For the first time, Rachel's breathing steadied. She looked at me not like a mother-in-law, but like someone standing on the edge of a cliff, finally ready to step into light. Margaret, she whispered, you don't understand what you're risking. I managed a faint smile. I do. But sometimes, the only thing worse than opening the suitcase is leaving it closed. A car door slammed outside. We both froze. Rachel turned pale. His home early. Evan's footsteps approached the porch. I rose to my feet slowly, heart hammering, my fingers still trembling from what I'd just heard. The truth was out, at least between us. But the hardest part was yet to come. Because now, we had to face the man who made both of us silent. And silence, I realized, was the only thing that had ever protected him. The door creaked open before either of us could move. Evan stepped inside, brushing rain from his jacket. He looked tired, but not from work. From running. From hiding. His eyes fell instantly on us, two women sitting at the kitchen table with tear-streaked faces and a silence that screamed louder than any words. What's going on? He asked, his voice careful. Rachel's hand tightened around mine under the table. I could feel her trembling. I stood slowly. We need to talk. He glanced between us. About what? About what's buried in the lake, I said. The color drained from his face. Just like that. No confusion, no denial, just recognition. Who told you? He asked, his tone hardening. I took a step forward. No one had to. I saw you both that night. I found it. I opened it. He stared at me for a long moment, then ran a hand through his hair. Mom, you shouldn't have done that. The calm in his voice wasn't guilt, it was control. That same careful tone he'd used since childhood, whenever he was cornered but determined not to look weak. Rachel's voice cracked. Evan, please. She deserves to know the truth. He turned on her, sharp as glass. Don't start this again. We agreed to keep it quiet. Agreed. I snapped. You mean you threatened her? His jaw clenched. You don't understand what that box could do, Mom. The things inside it, they're poison. If they get out, people will think our family's sick. You, me, all of us. I stared at him, horrified. So you'd rather bury it? Pretend none of it happened? Yes, he shouted. Because it's not our fault. It's her father's. It's ancient history. Why should we pay for his sins? Rachel flinched as if the words themselves had struck her. Because those sins still live inside me, she whispered. Because pretending didn't save me, it just kept me in chains. Evan's expression softened for a second, but it didn't last. You don't know what it's like trying to build something real, Mom. My business, my name, It's everything I've worked for. If people found out that my wife's family, your wife, I cut him off, is the one who was hurt. The one who's been carrying this alone. And you made her throw away the only thing she had left of her sister. He looked away. It was just too much. All those tapes and letters. Every time I heard her talk about it, it made me sick. I just wanted it gone. Rachel stood now, tears streaming freely. You wanted me gone, Evan. You just didn't have the courage to say it. He turned toward her, his face tightening. That's not fair. No, she said. What's not fair is that I married you thinking I'd finally escaped the kind of man who destroys people to protect his own pride. The air was electric, heavy, alive, impossible to breathe in. Evan's eyes flicked to me, desperate. Mom, you're really going to take her side after everything I've done for you? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, my son, my only child, and saw not the boy I'd raised, but a man who'd learned that silence was safety. I took your side your whole life, I said softly. Even when you were wrong. Even when you lied. But not this time. His voice cracked. You don't know what it's like to live with shame. I stepped closer until we were eye to eye. I do now. Something in him broke then, not visibly, not loudly, but in the way he blinked too fast, the way his lips trembled before tightening again. He looked at Rachel, then back at me. What are you going to do? Tell people? Ruin us? Rachel's voice was steady now. No, Evan. I'm going to free myself. She reached for the old cassette recorder sitting on the counter, the same one from the suitcase. She pressed play. A young girl's voice filled the kitchen. Soft. Shaking. Terrified. He told me not to tell anyone. But if something happens to me, it's because I tried to tell the truth. Please, Rachel. Don't let him win. The recording clicked off. Silence. Evan turned pale, swallowing hard. What is this supposed to do? He's dead. It's over. Rachel's gaze hardened. Not until someone says his name. Not until someone listens. Her words hung there like a curse, or a prayer. Then she looked at me. Margaret, I'm sorry you had to be part of this. I never meant for you to find out this way. I reached out and touched her arm. Don't be sorry. You didn't break this family. Silence did. Evan slammed his hand against the counter. You're both being dramatic. You think the world will care about something that happened decades ago? They'll destroy us for nothing. I turned toward him slowly. Maybe they should. He stared at me, stunned. Evan, I said, voice trembling, I spent my whole life believing you were good. But if protecting your image means burying someone else's pain, then I failed as a mother. For the first time, he didn't argue. He just stood there, a man stripped bare of excuses, staring into the reflection of who he'd become. Rachel took a deep breath and whispered, I'm going to the police tomorrow. I'm done hiding. He looked at her, horrified. You can't. I can, she interrupted. And I will. If you want to be part of my life after that, you'll have to live with the truth. Evan didn't answer. He just walked to the window, staring out at the lake. The same lake that had swallowed their secrets. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady, rippling the water's surface. I stood beside Rachel. Together, we watched him, a man finally realizing that the past doesn't stay buried. It only waits. He whispered something, almost to himself. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted it all to stop. Rachel's voice was gentle now. Then stop running. Evan turned, eyes wet, face pale. I don't know how. I reached out a hand to him. For a second, I thought he might take it. But he just shook his head, whispered I'm sorry, and walked out the door into the rain. Rachel exhaled, trembling. Do you think he'll come back? I looked at the lake and whispered, that depends on whether he's ready to stop pretending the water's clean. We stood there in silence, the rain washing over everything, the lies, the shame, the memories that had clawed their way back to the surface. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. Because ghosts don't haunt the truth. They rest in it. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It felt like the sky was trying to wash the lake clean, as if it too, was tired of carrying secrets. Every morning, I sat by the kitchen window, watching the water ripple and fade into mist, half expecting to see Evan's silhouette appear through it. But he didn't come home. Rachel barely spoke. She moved through the house like someone learning how to breathe again, careful, fragile, uncertain. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, it was healing. The kind of silence that knows words would only reopen wounds. On the fourth morning, I found her sitting at the table with a cup of untouched coffee, staring at her phone. "Any word from him?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "No. I called his office. He hasn't shown up there either." I nodded slowly. "He needs time. He's been hiding for so long, he doesn't know who he is without the lies." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I keep thinking I should have never let you find that suitcase." I looked at her. "If I hadn't, he would have kept burying you alive." That made her look up. Her eyes were red but strong. "Do you think he'll forgive me?" I hesitated. "I think forgiveness isn't what he needs right now. He needs truth. Maybe for the first time in his life." She nodded faintly, but her fingers trembled as she lifted the cup to her lips. That afternoon, the rain finally broke. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. It was strange how peaceful everything looked, as if the world didn't know it had just witnessed the end of a lie. Then, around sunset, a car pulled into the driveway. Rachel froze. I walked to the window and saw Evan's truck. Mud splattered the sides. He stepped out slowly, his shoulders hunched, his clothes damp, his eyes empty. "He came back," I whispered. Rachel stood, her body trembling. "I don't know if I can face him." "Yes, you can," I said, squeezing her hand. "You already faced worse." The front door creaked open. Evan stepped inside. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor. His face looked older. Defeated. "I went to the station," he finally said. His voice was hoarse, uneven. "But I couldn't go in." Rachel's eyes filled. "Why?" He swallowed. "Because I realized something. Telling the truth doesn't fix everything. But hiding it breaks everything." He stepped closer, his hands shaking. "I can't undo what I made you do, Rachel. But I can stop pretending it didn't happen." He pulled a small brown envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. "I wrote down everything," he said. "Names. Dates. What I saw. What I made you do. I'll take it in tomorrow morning." Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Tears slipped through her fingers. I felt my throat tighten. For the first time, I saw my son not as a coward, but as a man trying to crawl out of the pit he dug himself into. "Evan," I said softly, "you can't change the past. But you can stop letting it own you." He looked at me, eyes glassy. "I don't deserve either of you." Rachel stepped forward. "You're right. You don't. But maybe that's where change begins." They stood there, two broken people finally standing in the same truth. He nodded weakly, wiping his eyes. "I'll go tomorrow. I promise." That night, none of us slept. We sat in the living room, the three of us, barely talking, letting the fire burn low while the lake outside shimmered under the moonlight. At some point, Evan spoke quietly. Do you think Dad would have understood?" I looked into the flames. "Your father would have done what I'm doing now, making sure his son finally learned the difference between protection and denial." He nodded slowly. "I just didn't want to lose everything." Rachel turned to him. "Evan, sometimes you have to lose everything to see what's worth keeping." The words hit him hard. I could see it in his eyes, the realization, the pain, the acceptance. When morning came, he left early with the envelope in his hand. Rachel and I stood by the window, watching as he drove away. Neither of us spoke until his truck disappeared down the road. Rachel whispered, "Do you think he'll really go through with it?" I smiled faintly. "If he doesn't, he'll have to face me again." She laughed, the first laugh I'd heard from her in months. It was small, shaky, but real. Later that day, I walked down to the lake alone. The water was calm now, sunlight flickering across the surface like shards of glass. For the first time, I didn't see it as a place of secrets, but a mirror. One that had forced us to look at what we'd become. I picked up a small stone and tossed it in. Ripples spread outward, soft and endless, like the kind that happen when truth finally touches still water. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Rachel joined me, her arms wrapped in a cardigan. "He texted," she said quietly. My heart jumped. "And he did it. He turned everything in. They're keeping him there for questioning." I closed my eyes. Relief and sorrow flooded through me all at once. Rachel exhaled shakily. "Do you think it's over?" I shook my head. "No. But it's beginning to heal." We stood side by side, watching the lake swallow another sunset, not as a grave this time, but as a witness. For once, the world felt still. But deep inside, I knew one more truth, the kind of truth that doesn't fade with time. Secrets never stay buried. They wait, patiently, for courage to find them. And that courage, at last, had come. It's been 6 months since that morning at the lake. The seasons have changed. The snow came and went, the garden bloomed again, and the house that once echoed with arguments now hums with a quiet sort of peace. Evan never came back to live here. He rented a small apartment closer to downtown and started therapy. The investigation wrapped up 2 months ago. His testimony helped reopen several cold cases, and Rita's father was finally convicted. The day the verdict came in, I sat on the courthouse steps beside Rita. She didn't cry. She just looked up at the gray sky and whispered, "It's over." But I knew it never really ends. Not when pain like that has lived inside you for years. It just changes shape. Since then, she started volunteering at a shelter for abused women. Some nights she comes home late, exhausted but glowing, like she's slowly rebuilding the girl she used to be. As for me, I've learned to live with silence again. But it's a different kind of silence this time. Not fear. Not denial. Just peace. I spend most mornings sitting on the back porch, watching the sun rise over the lake, the same lake that once terrified me. It looks different now. Maybe it's the light, or maybe it's me. I used to see darkness beneath that water. Now, I see reflection. Sometimes I think back to that night, the headlights cutting through the fog, the splash, the way my heart stopped when I heard that faint voice say, "Please don't open it." Back then, I thought I was standing on the edge of something supernatural. But now I realize it wasn't a ghost calling to me. It was the past itself, begging not to be disturbed, because truth can be far scarier than any haunting. I smile to myself sometimes, thinking how different life turned out. I'm 67. I've lived through wars, grief, loneliness, but nothing tested my soul like learning what my own family was capable of hiding. One afternoon, Rita came out to sit beside me. She handed me a cup of tea and said quietly, "You never asked me why I said nothing all those years." I looked at her. "Because you were scared. Because silence felt safer." She nodded. It did. Until it didn't. We sat in the breeze, the smell of wet grass around us. She whispered, "You saved me that night. Not because you pulled out the suitcase, but because you didn't walk away from what you found." Her words hit something deep inside me. For a long time, I thought motherhood was about protecting your children from pain. But maybe it's about guiding them through it. Maybe love isn't soft or gentle. Maybe it's fierce, the kind that drags truth out of the dark even when it hurts. I looked out over the water and said, "I didn't save you, sweetheart. The truth did." She smiled, eyes glistening. "Still, thank you for opening it." That night, I couldn't sleep again, but not from fear. I just lay there, thinking about all the women who never find the courage to open their own suitcase, to confront what's buried deep. So I decided to write my story down. Every detail. Every heartbeat of it. Not to expose anyone, but to remind people that silence is a choice, and it always comes with a price. I mailed a copy to the same shelter where Rita volunteers. A few weeks later, I got a letter from one of the women there. She wrote, "Your story made me open a box I hid in my attic for 15 years. Inside was the proof of everything I tried to forget. I called the police today. Thank you for reminding me that truth doesn't drown, it just waits." I cried that night. Not out of sadness, but relief. Because maybe that was the reason it all happened, so that one more voice could be heard. The lake is still there, calm and unassuming. The locals sometimes talk about it, how it used to be haunted, how people swore they heard voices echoing off the water. I don't correct them. Maybe in a way, it is haunted. Not by ghosts, but by truth. By the things we try to bury and the courage it takes to dig them back up. I've come to believe that every family has its lake, a place where secrets sink and memories wait. Some people never go back. But those who do, they come out changed. And I came out free. Before I close this chapter of my life, there's one thing I want to say to anyone still listening. Don't ignore the splash. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Don't turn away from the truth just because it's ugly, because sometimes the ugliest truths save lives. Silence doesn't keep peace. It only keeps wounds from healing. And love, real love, is the courage to open the suitcase, no matter what you find inside.